This second-year player is leading the NFL in passing yards and leading one of the premier passing attacks in football. Where have I seen this before? Oh no, Lord have mercy. In 2018, you may remember a young first-round quarterback taking the league by storm as a second-year player. That quarterback was Patrick Mahomes, who immediately launched himself into perennial All-Pro status. Mahomes was a passing machine in his first true year in the NFL, throwing for over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns to just 12 interceptions. Obviously, Mahomes was a generational talent waiting to be refined, but behind the magic of Mahomes was a wizard by the name of Eric Bieniemy. 2018 was Bieniemy's first year as the Chiefs' offensive coordinator, and while he was underneath Andy Reid, the Bieniemy effect was already being felt by the NFL, and continued to be felt until this season, when he left the Chiefs to be Washington's assistant head coach and offensive coordinator, giving him the chance to create his own offensive system. That offensive system has created a monster in the name of Sam Howell. In Sam Howell's cup of coffee in the NFL in 2022, his talents were well displayed, putting on an impressive showing against a talented and scary Dallas defense to grab the Week 18 win. There were plenty of wrinkles to be ironed out in his game, but Howell's ability to press the ball downfield and facilitate an NFL offense was finally obvious. After 17 weeks of being kept on the bench while Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz struggled, Howell brought a pass-happy identity to an otherwise limited Washington offense. Coming into 2023, Howell was finally given the nod as an undisputed quarterback one, giving him the ability to grow and develop at an NFL pace. But something was different about Howell's outlook in year two. Instead of being limited to a purgatory of endless screens and checkdowns under Scott Turner, he was feeling the Bieniemy effect. Eric Bieniemy's offense was going to give Howell the freedom to truly figure it out and test if he's Washington's solution to their quarterback problem. That freedom has come with immense success, but showed Howell's weaknesses as well. Bieniemy's system revolves around Howell's strength, the deep ball. Just as experiments with young Mahomes, the deep ball allows young, talented quarterbacks to unleash the offense and make use of their talented wide receivers. And while the talent of Howell may be less than Mahomes, and the talents of the Washington trio is certainly less than Tyreek Hill's, the general principles of the offense have translated very well. Howell's one of the NFL's best deep passers, even ranking 8th according to PFF. Howell's consistently placing the ball perfectly deep, dropping dimes over the opposing defenses. As soon as he sees leverage, Howell isn't afraid to sling it, and even his incompletions deep are elite throws just dropped by his teammates. His arm strength allows for a downfield approach as well, as Howell has a combination of strength and accuracy to be a consistent threat. Even in the face of pressure, Howell has the talent to strike deep, which is horrifying to imagine what he could do once he develops into a true professional. His arm talent isn't solely used to throw bombs on the field, but can be mixed with his surprising athleticism to use plays like bootlegs. Bootlegs are also used in DC to replace some play action, since Washington doesn't run the ball enough to convince defenders of the play fake. With so few games under his belt, Howell still has to be helped by schematics, and so Bieniemy dials up sail concepts and other simple yet effective plays to help Howell get comfortable in tough situations. Even when the scheme fails, Howell can scramble around until he finds a soft spot in zones, which he's done surprisingly consistently this season. The system doesn't just put everything on Howell's arm talent, however. Washington's sneaky skill players are key to the offense. Using screens, the ball can immediately be placed in the hands of Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, or Jahan Dotson, which is a greatly diverse group of guys who farm out yards after catch. Howell's deep mindset and overall experience in college has left him vulnerable to pressure. Especially evident in the Bills game in Week 3, Howell struggled early against pressure. He held the ball for much too long, forcing sacks and losing yards. He would fight to keep the play alive and play hero ball rather than just getting rid of it, which penalized his successes greatly. Even when he stayed in the pocket, Howell had the habit of getting flat-footed against pressure, which seems to have gone away, but is a habit that must be broken entirely. Luckily, Howell seems to have turned a corner. Much like Mahomes has, Howell has found a way to turn out a deep attack while still working on a quick ball release, and Bieniemy's screen game has helped facilitate that. He's begun to step up in the face of pressure, which is why he's been so effective in his last 3 games, including a shootout with Philadelphia. Giving Howell checkdowns has allowed him to grow into the habit of dinking and dunking down the field, which will be deadly as he continues to grow. Even in recognizing pressure faster, Howell's able to get out of the pocket and throw on the run more effectively. Bieniemy's system has paired with Sam Howell's potential to make a truly great passing offense. Howell sits atop the NFL's passing yard leaderboard, beating out slingers from elite offenses like Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff. Looking back at Mahomes' 2018 numbers, seeing how Bieniemy creates air raid guys out of seemingly nowhere, it was easy to see that Mahomes was the real deal. While Howell certainly isn't nearly as gifted, his 2023 numbers give off a similar impression. This kid can sling it. Projecting out the end of the season, Howell's looking at a season in which he throws for 4,700 yards and a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Not too shabby for someone who would only have 18 total games under his belt. But when you take Howell's last 3 games pace and project out those numbers for the rest of the season, which has been the turning point for Howell in getting the ball out quick and against pressure, Howell's numbers look a lot more like young Mahomes. 5,200 yards and 36 touchdowns is something Washington will gladly take, and finishing with 14 interceptions is a sacrifice well worth the yards and touchdowns involved, especially since that would only be 5 more for the rest of the season. Will Howell truly keep up this pace? I'm not sure. But even if he looks more like his complete average projection, Howell's proven himself to be a stud in the making in the nation's capital. Sam Howell has been great, and if we continue to look at the similarities to the 2018 Mahomes season, why isn't Washington one of the best teams in the leagues? There are a couple big factors to look at, but all of them boil down to the failure of Jack Del Rio's defense. Washington's defense was top 5 last year in nearly every category imaginable, and it only got better over the offseason, adding rookies Emmanuel Forbes Jr., Quan Martin, Andre Jones Jr., and getting Fedarian Mathis back from his Week 1 ACL tear last year to an already talented defensive group. With Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Deron Payne, and John Allen in the front, Washington had one of the best defensive lines in the game. Jamin Davis, Cody Barton, David Mayo, and Khaleke Hudson made up a developing but workable linebacker core. Kendall Fuller, Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juste, Danny Johnson, Cam Curl, Quan Martin, and Derek Forrest forming one of the brightest young secondaries in the league as well. Unfortunately, Washington's scheme has just been abysmal this year, and each player's individual performances haven't yet connected into a workable defense in 2023. The defense went from 5th in the NFL, or better, to 30th in points allowed in the first half and 28th in points allowed in the second half, which means that the offense is constantly fighting to stay in the game at all. Averaging 27 points allowed per game is just not acceptable for a defense, especially one so talented, and leaves the offense out to dry. Not only is the offense being backstabbed, their own play calling is determined by the defense's failures. Washington is tied to San Francisco at 8th in rushing yards per attempt, a very efficient clip, but runs the ball at the league's lowest rate. Why, when you have Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, is the ball being run so little? Although Washington's offensive line is below average at run blocking, the effectiveness is statistically proven, and even leaning to the run just a few more snaps a game would not only make Washington's offense deadly, but make Sam Howell even more effective, as they can mix in play action and stretch the defense. Looking at this rushing play from Week 8, the Washington rush attack can compete against the best. Washington's running a simple gap run. Something I want to point out is just how bad the Eagles linebackers sell out and crash against the run. If Washington ran the ball even a little bit more often, Howell could punch the middle of the field that's left open by that play action. Robinson is given a canyon to run through, and the block from McLaurin helps seal the box and let B-Rob run outside, putting on a little shimmy for a first down. Even just a small, insignificant play like this offers hope for the offense if they could just run the ball a little more. Kansas City has struggled with the run game since Mahomes' debut, and Washington's looking at the same problem if their defense can't stall out opposing offenses. Making Howell, an already uber-talented QB prospect, great hasn't been much of a problem for Bieniemy. Actually running the ball and keeping defenses honest is his first real challenge to prove himself as a top-tier coach in the NFL. Sam Howell has proved himself to be a top young quarterback in the league, and the answer to the quarterback question in Washington. With the first stable quarterback since Kirk Cousins left, this is an entirely new era in DC. As long as Howell continues to develop against pressure and still push the ball downfield, Commanders may have finally have optimism about their offense, something that hasn't been said for the good part of the last decade. Howell, quite honestly, feels like a young Russell Wilson. He can scramble, he can play tough, and he throws a beautiful deep ball. As long as Howell can continue to develop with Bieniemy, we may see Howell reach the heights of a prime Russell Wilson, and Bieniemy, Unlike the coach in Seattle, will let Howell cook.